The stars looked different out here. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the USS Defiant, watching the distant lights through the main screen. His ship was alone in this part of space, far from Earth and the other human colonies. The Defiant was big and strong, one of humanity's best warships, but out here it felt very small. "Captain, we're getting something on the sensors," said Lieutenant Commander Lisa Parker from her station. She was his tactical officer, the person who watched for threats and handled the ship's weapons. Her voice was calm, but Jake could hear the worry underneath. Jake walked over to look at her screen. "What do you see?" "Ships, sir. Lots of them. They're coming our way fast." Lisa's fingers moved quickly over her controls. "I count 12 vessels. They're big, bigger than anything in our files." Chief Engineer Ben Hayes looked up from his station near the back of the bridge. He was a quiet man who knew every bolt and wire in the ship. "Captain, those energy readings don't match anything. We know. These aren't human ships." Jake felt his heart beat faster. First contact with aliens was something every captain dreamed about and feared. The human race had been exploring space for 50 years, but they had never met another intelligent species. Until now. "Red alert, all hands to battle stations," Jake ordered. Warning lights began flashing red throughout the ship. The bridge crew moved quickly to their emergency positions. 800 people lived and worked on the Defiant, and now their lives might depend on the next few minutes. The alien ships appeared on the main screen as they came closer. They were beautiful and terrible at the same time. Their hulls were dark blue and silver, shaped like curved blades cutting through space. Each ship was twice the size of the Defiant, and they moved with perfect formation. "They're surrounding us," Lisa reported. 12 ships in attack positions. "We're completely surrounded." The communication system crackled to life. A voice spoke in perfect English, though it sounded strange, like it came from a throat not meant for human words. "Human vessel, you will surrender immediately. I am War Commander Zalthek of the Cathari Empire. Your ship is surrounded and outgunned. Submit to Imperial authority, and your crew will be spared as slaves." Jake looked around his bridge. His crew was watching him, waiting for orders. Lisa had her hand on the weapons controls. Ben was checking the ship's power systems. Medical officer, Dr. Amy Collins, had arrived from the sick bay, ready to help with casualties. They all looked scared, but none of them looked ready to give up. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the United Earth ship Defiant," Jake said into the communication system. "We are explorers and peacekeepers, not invaders. We don't want to fight, but we won't surrender our ship or our freedom." There was silence for a moment. Then the alien voice came back, sounding confused. "You refuse surrender? Your ship is alone. You cannot win this battle. Why do you choose death over service?" Jake thought about Earth, about the colonies full of families and children. He thought about the other human ships that might come this way. Someone had to make a stand. "Because some things are worth fighting for," Jake said. On the alien flagship, War Commander Zalthek stared at the human ship on his screen. In 300 years of conquest, no species had ever refused surrender when faced with such odds. The Cathari Empire had defeated 1,000 worlds, and every intelligent race had seen wisdom in submission when faced with certain death. "War Commander," said his tactical officer, "the humans show no signs of powering down their weapons. They appear to be preparing for battle." Zalthek's 4 eyes narrowed. The Cathari were warriors, bred for conquest. They respected strength, but this was not strength. This was madness. "Perhaps they do not understand their situation," Zalthek said. "Target their weapons and engines. Disable them with minimal damage. We will take them alive and learn why their minds are broken." Back on the Defiant, alarms were sounding throughout the ship. Jake could hear his crew running through the corridors, getting ready for a fight they probably couldn't win. "Captain," Lisa said, "they're powering up weapons, all 12 ships." "How do we look?" Jake asked. "Not good, sir. They outgun us 8-1. Our shields are strong, but not that strong." Ben Hayes spoke up from his station. "Captain, I can give you everything the engines have. We might be able to ram one of their ships before they destroy us." "Let's hope it doesn't come to that," Jake said. But he was proud of his crew. They weren't talking about surrender, they were talking about how to fight. Dr. Collins was checking her medical supplies. "I've got the sick bay ready for casualties. Emergency medical teams are standing by on all decks." "Thank you, Amy," Jake said. He looked around at his people one more time. They were good people, brave people. If this was their last fight, at least they would go down swinging. The first alien energy blast hit the Defiant's shields like a hammer. The whole ship shook, and sparks flew from several control panels. Jake grabbed onto his captain's chair. To keep from falling. "Shields down to 80%, Lisa reported. "They're just testing us, sir. That wasn't full power." Another blast hit them, then another. The Cathari were playing with them, Jake realized. They wanted to disable the ship, not destroy it. That might give the humans a chance. "Lisa, target their lead ship. Ben, give me all the power you can. Let's show them what humans can do." The Defiant's weapons fired back, blue beams of energy reaching out toward the alien flagship. The blasts hit the enemy shields and flared bright against the darkness of space. On the Cathari flagship, alarms began sounding. "War Commander, the human ship has damaged our forward shields," the tactical officer reported. "How is this possible? Their weapons should not be able to penetrate our defenses." Zalthek studied the readings. The human ship was smaller and weaker than his vessels, but their weapons were focused and precise. More importantly, they were fighting back with everything they had. "Increase power to the attack," Zalthek ordered. "But do not destroy them yet. I want to understand these creatures." The battle was just beginning, and already the war commander was seeing something he had never seen before. The humans were not fighting to win. They had to know they couldn't win. They were fighting for something else, something the Cathari didn't understand. As more energy blasts lit up the space around the Defiant, Jake Morrison stood on his bridge and watched his crew work. They were scared, but they weren't giving up. They were human, and that meant something. Soon the aliens would learn exactly what it meant. The space around the USS Defiant turned into a storm of light and fire. 12 alien ships poured their weapons into the lone human vessel, and the Defiant shook like a toy in a hurricane. Captain Jake Morrison held onto his chair as another blast knocked out the lights on the bridge. "Shields down to 40%, Lisa Parker shouted over the noise of alarms and sparking equipment. Her face was lit by the red glow of emergency lights. "Hull breaches on deck 7 and 9, we're losing atmosphere." Jake could hear the sound of metal tearing somewhere deep in his ship. The Defiant was dying around them, but his crew kept working. They didn't run. They didn't panic. They just kept fighting. "Emergency teams to deck 7 and 9, Dr. Amy Collins said into her communicator. "I need medical teams at Section 12. We have wounded." On the alien flagship, War Commander Zalthek watched the human ship take punishment that would have destroyed most vessels. The Defiant's shields were flickering and failing. Fires burned through several sections, and he could see pieces of hull floating away into space. Any normal species would surrender now. "War Commander," his tactical officer said. "The human ship is badly damaged. They cannot fight much longer." "And yet they continue to fire at us," Zalthek replied. He studied the battle display with growing unease. "Their weapons accuracy is actually improving. How is this possible?" It was true. Even as the Defiant took more damage, the human return fire became more precise. The aliens had expected the humans to become less effective as their ship was damaged. Instead, they seemed to be fighting harder. "Sir, we're getting reports from our other ships," the tactical officer continued. "The humans are targeting our weapon systems specifically. They're trying to disable our ability to fight." "While we are trying to disable theirs," Zalthek said, slowly. "They think like warriors, not like prey." On the Defiant, the situation was getting worse by the second. Lieutenant Commander Lisa Parker's weapons console exploded in a shower of sparks, throwing her backward. She hit the floor hard, blood running from a cut on her forehead. "Lisa!" Jake started toward her, but she was already getting back up. "I'm okay, Captain," she said, wiping blood from her face. "But the main weapons array is offline." Lieutenant Ryan Clark, the backup weapons officer, stepped forward. He was young, maybe 25, and this was his first real battle. "Sir, I can get to the manual targeting system. but I'll have to go through Section 8. That's where the hull breach is. Too dangerous, Jake said. With respect, sir, if we don't get weapons back online, we're all dead anyway. Ryan's voice was steady despite his fear. I can make it. Jake looked at the young officer. Ryan could die trying to reach the manual weapons, but without weapons they would all die anyway. It was a terrible choice, but it was the only choice they had. Go, Jake said. Take Williams and Chen with you. Ryan nodded and ran from the bridge. 2 other crew members followed him into the damaged sections of the ship. War Commander Zalthek watched his screens with growing amazement. His sensors showed humans moving through the damaged parts of their ship, working in areas that should have been impossible to survive. Some sections had no air, others were filled with radiation from damaged systems. And yet the humans kept working. War Commander, this is impossible, his science officer said. Our sensors show humans working in areas with no life support. They should be dead. Show me, Zalthek ordered. The screen changed to show the inside of the human ship. Zalthek could see human crew members wearing emergency suits, welding metal, plates over holes in the hull while energy blast from his own ships lit up the space around them. In one section, a human engineer was manually connecting power cables while floating in zero gravity. They're repairing their ship during battle, Zalthek said in wonder. I have never seen anything like this. His tactical officer pointed to another display. Look at this, War Commander. The humans in their medical bay. The screen showed Dr. Amy Collins and her medical team treating wounded crew members. What shocked Zalthek was that many of the wounded humans refused to stay in the medical bay. As soon as Dr. Collins finished treating them, they returned to their battle stations. Their wounded are going back to fight, the science officer said. This behavior makes no sense. They should be seeking safety. But Zalthek was beginning to understand something. These humans weren't just fighting to win. They were fighting for each other. Every human on that ship was willing to die so the others could live a little longer. Deep in the Defiant, Lieutenant Ryan Clark crawled through a corridor filled with smoke and twisted metal. The air was thin, and he could barely breathe through his emergency mask. Behind him, Petty Officers Williams and Chen followed, carrying the tools they would need to restore weapons control. Almost there, Ryan gasped into his communicator. Section 8 is completely destroyed, but I can reach the manual systems through the maintenance shaft. Be careful, Ryan. Captain Morrison's voice crackled through the static. We need you alive more than we need the weapons. Ryan smiled. Grimly. That was Captain Morrison for you, always thinking about his people first. But Ryan knew the truth. Without weapons, the whole ship would be destroyed in minutes. His life wasn't worth more than 800 others. They reached the manual weapons control station. It was a backup system that few people even knew how to use, but Ryan had studied every system on the ship. His hands moved quickly over the old-fashioned controls, manually aiming the ship's remaining weapons. Weapons back online, he reported to the bridge. I can give you 60% power to the main guns. Outstanding work, Jake replied. Now get back here safely. But as Ryan and his team started back through the damaged corridor, another alien blast hit the ship. The corridor they had just come through collapsed, trapping them in the weapons section. Captain, we're trapped down here, Ryan reported. But the weapons are working. I can keep firing as long as you need me to. On the bridge, Jake closed his eyes for a moment. Ryan and his team were probably going to die down there, and they all knew it. But Ryan's voice was calm, professional. He was ready to do his duty. Thank you, Ryan, Jake said. All of you. War Commander Zalthek had been listening to the human communications. His translators picked up most of what the humans were saying to each other. What he heard made no sense according to everything the Kethari believed about warfare and survival. The humans trapped in the weapons section were not begging for rescue. They were asking how they could help the rest of the ship. The wounded humans were refusing medical treatment so that others could be helped first. And throughout it all, the human captain kept asking about his crew, not about his own survival. War Commander, his tactical officer said, should we target their weapons section? We know where their remaining crew are located. Zalthek stared at the display showing the brave humans trapped deep in their dying ship. still fighting, still trying to protect their comrades. For the first time in his long military career, he hesitated. "War Commander?" the tactical officer asked again. "Continue the attack," Zalthek said finally. "But target their engines instead. Disable them without destroying the weapons section." The tactical officer looked confused, but obeyed. As more energy blasts hammered the Defiant, Zalthek wondered what kind of species he was really fighting. These humans were changing everything he thought he knew about war, about courage, and about what it meant to be strong. The USS Defiant was dying, but it refused to die quietly. Half the ship's systems were offline. Fires burned through 3 decks, and the main engines were completely destroyed. Captain Jake Morrison stood on his bridge surrounded by smoke and sparks, watching his crew work miracles with broken equipment. "Captain," Chief Engineer Ben Hayes called from his station, "I can give you one more option. The emergency thrusters still work. We could use them to ram the alien flagship." Jake looked at the tactical display. The Cathari command ship was massive, probably 3 times the size of the Defiant. But if they could hit it at the right angle, they might be able to damage it badly enough to even the odds for any human ships that came after them. "How long would it take?" Jake asked. 5 minutes to build up enough speed," Ben replied. "Maybe 6. "Do it," Jake ordered. "All hands, prepare for ramming speed. This is our last chance to hurt them." Throughout the ship, the crew received the order with grim determination. They knew what it meant. None of them would survive ramming the alien flagship, but maybe their sacrifice would mean something. War Commander Zalthek watched in horror as the human ship changed course directly toward his flagship. His sensors showed the Defiant's engines were destroyed, but somehow the humans were moving their ship using small emergency thrusters. It would take them several minutes to reach ramming speed, but they were definitely coming straight for him. "War Commander, the human ship is attempting to ram us," his tactical officer reported, though everyone on the bridge could see it clearly. "I can see that," Zalthek snapped. "Why are they doing this? Their ship is crippled. They could still surrender." "Perhaps their minds have broken under the stress of battle," the science officer suggested, but Zalthek didn't think so. Everything he had seen from these humans showed clear thinking and careful planning. They weren't crazy. They were desperate, and desperate humans were apparently very dangerous. "All ships, focus fire on the human vessel," Zalthek ordered. "Destroy them before they can reach us." The 12 Cathari ships turned all their weapons on the approaching Defiant. Energy blasts hammered the human ship from every direction. Pieces of hull flew off into space. Internal explosions lit up the bridge windows, and the ship's shield generators finally gave up completely. But the Defiant kept coming. On the human bridge, everything was chaos. Control panels exploded one after another. The artificial gravity failed, leaving everyone floating in the smoky air. Emergency lights flickered and died, leaving only the glow of fires to see by. "Hull breach on the bridge," Dr. Amy Collins reported. She was floating near the ceiling, trying to treat a wounded crew member while debris flew around them. "We're losing atmosphere fast. Emergency suits," Jake ordered, though half his crew were already putting them on. "How much longer, Ben?" 3 minutes to ramming speed," Ben replied through his suit radio. "But I don't think we'll make it, Captain. They're tearing us apart." Jake looked around his ruined bridge. Most of his senior officers were wounded. Lieutenant Ryan Clark was still trapped in the weapons section, probably dead by now. The ship computer was offline, the navigation system was destroyed, and they were flying blind toward the enemy flagship. "We'll make it," Jake said firmly. "We have to." But as he spoke, something unexpected happened. The ship's communication system crackled to life with a transmission from space. It wasn't from the Cathari ships. It was something else entirely. "All vessels in this sector. This is Hive Mind Prime of the Sectar Collective. You will cease hostilities and prepare for absorption into our collective. Resistance will result in immediate termination." Through the bridge windows, Jake could see new ships appearing in the distance. They were different from both human and Cathari vessels. These ships looked like giant insects with curved sections that moved and shifted as they flew. There were dozens of them, and more were appearing every second. War Commander Zalthek felt ice in his veins as he saw the Sectar fleet emerge from hyperspace. The Sectar were the Cathari Empire's oldest and most feared enemies. They were a hive mind species that consumed entire worlds, turning every living thing into part of their collective consciousness. For centuries, the Cathari had fought to keep the Sectar from invading their territory. "War Commander, what are your orders?" his tactical officer asked. "The Sectar fleet outnumbers us 3-1. Zalthek stared at the tactical display. His 12 ships were already damaged from fighting the humans. The Sectar had brought 40 vessels, all fresh and ready for battle. And caught between them was the crippled human ship, still trying to ram his flagship. "Sir, the human vessel is still approaching," another officer reported. 2 minutes to impact." Zalthek made a decision that surprised everyone on his bridge, including himself. "Cease fire on the human ship. All vessels prepare to engage the Sectar fleet." "Sir?" his tactical officer asked in confusion. "You heard me. The humans are no longer our primary threat." On the Defiant, Jake watched in amazement as the alien energy blast stopped hitting his ship. The Cathari vessels were turning away from them, moving to face the new threat from the insect-like ships. "Captain," Lisa Parker called from her damaged console. "I'm picking up communications between the two alien fleets. The translator is working on some of it." "What are they saying?" "The bug ships are demanding surrender. The blue ships are refusing. I think they're going to fight each other." Jake looked at the tactical situation. The Defiant was caught between two alien fleets that were about to start shooting at each other. His ship was barely holding together, his crew was wounded and exhausted, and they had no weapons left except the ship itself. But Jake Morrison had been a starship captain for 15 years, and he had learned to think fast in impossible situations. He opened a communication channel to both alien fleets. "This is Captain Morrison of the human vessel Defiant. War Commander Zalthek, you said earlier that our species could settle our differences later. I think later just arrived. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. What do you say we work together on this?" There was silence on the communication channel for several long seconds. Then Zalthek's voice came through clearly. "Human Captain, are you proposing an alliance?" "I'm proposing we help each other survive the next hour," Jake replied. "After that, we can go back to shooting at each other if you want." War Commander Zalthek looked around his bridge at his officers. An alliance with an alien species was against every tradition of the Cathari Empire. They were conquerors, not partners. But the alternative was likely death for all of them. "What can you offer, human? Your ship is crippled." Jake smiled grimly. "War Commander, you've been shooting at us for 20 minutes and we're still here. We're crippled, but we're not dead. And we really don't like being pushed around by bullies no matter what species they are." As if to prove his point, the first Sectar energy blasts reached the area where the human and Cathari ships were located. The insect ships were not interested in conversation or surrender. They had come to destroy everything in their path. "Alliance. Accepted, human captain," Zalthek said quickly. "What are your orders?" It was the first time in Cathari history that a war commander had asked an alien for orders. But these were not normal circumstances, and the humans had already proven they were not a normal species. Jake looked at his ruined ship and his wounded crew, then at the approaching Sectar fleet. They were still outnumbered and outgunned. But now they had allies. Strange, proud warrior allies who were learning that sometimes the strongest thing you can do is ask for help. "Ben, forget about ramming speed," Jake ordered. "Give me everything you can for maneuvering. Lisa, see if you can get any weapons back online. We're about to show these bugs what happens when you mess with Earth and her new friends." The space battle that followed was unlike anything War Commander Zalthek had ever seen. The Sectar ships attacked with cold efficiency, their weapons designed to destroy rather than capture. But the combined human and Cathari forces fought back with something the insect ships had never encountered before: cooperation between two completely different species. Captain Jake Morrison's voice came through the communication system, calm and clear despite his ship falling apart around him. "Cathari vessels. The Sectar ships have weak spots at their wing joints. Target those areas. We'll draw their fire while you get into position." The crippled USS Defiant limped forward, using its emergency thrusters to position itself between the Sector fleet and the damaged Cathari ships. It was insane. The human ship could barely move, had no shields, and only half its weapons working. But it deliberately made itself a target so the Cathari could attack more effectively. "Human captain, your ship will be destroyed," Zaltek said over the radio. "Maybe," Jake replied, "but you'll get a few good shots in first. Sometimes that's enough." On the Defiance bridge, the crew worked with desperate efficiency. Dr. Amy Collins had set up an emergency medical station right on the bridge, treating wounded crew members who refused to leave their posts. Chief Engineer Ben Hayes was lying on his back under a control panel, connecting power cables by hand while energy blasts shook the ship around him. "Captain," Ben called out, "I can give you one more weapons burst, but it'll probably burn out the remaining power systems." "Save it for the right moment," Jake replied. He was watching the tactical display, looking for the perfect opportunity to strike. The Cathari ships moved into attack formation, following Jake's advice about targeting the Sector weak points. War Commander Zaltek watched in amazement as his weapons officers found that the human captain was right. The insect ships were vulnerable at their wing joints, and focused fire there could disable them. But what amazed Zaltek even more was how the humans continued to help, even as their own ship was being destroyed. Lieutenant Commander Lisa Parker, blood still running from the cut on her forehead, was using the ship's damaged sensors to guide Cathari targeting. She was sharing human tactical data with aliens who had been trying to kill her just minutes before. "Cathari ship Blade of Honor, you have 3 Sector vessels approaching from your port side," Lisa reported. "Suggest you rotate 30 degrees and target the lead ship's wing joints." "Understood, human vessel," came the reply from the Cathari ship. "Your guidance is appreciated." The battle raged for what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes. The Sector ships were powerful and numerous, but they had never faced an enemy that shared information and coordinated attacks like the human Cathari alliance. Slowly, the tide began to turn. Deep in the Defiant, Lieutenant Ryan Clark was still trapped in the weapons section with Petty Officers Williams and Chen. The corridor leading back to the main ship had completely collapsed, and they had no way to escape. But they could still operate the manual weapons, and they kept firing at every Sector ship that came within range. "Ryan, can you hear me?" Captain Morrison's voice came through the damaged communication system. "Yes, sir, we're still here, still fighting. You've done more than enough. Try to find a way out of there." Ryan looked around the damaged weapons section. The walls were cracked, the air was thin, and pieces of metal hung down from the ceiling. But the weapons still worked, and there were still enemy ships to shoot at. "Negative, Captain. We can do more good here. Besides, Williams says he's not done yet." Petty Officer Williams, a big man from Texas, grinned despite their situation. "That's right, sir, these bug ships picked the wrong fight." War Commander Zaltek had been listening to the human communications throughout the battle. What he heard changed everything he thought he knew about strength and courage. The humans trapped in their weapons section weren't complaining about their situation. They were joking about it. The wounded humans on the bridge weren't asking for help. They were offering to keep working, and Captain Morrison kept asking about his crew, not about himself. Even as his ship was being torn apart, his first concern was always for his people. The turning point came when the largest Sector ship, their command vessel, moved to attack the Cathari flagship. The insect ship was enormous, covered in weapon ports that glowed with deadly energy. If it destroyed Zaltek's ship, the alliance would collapse, and both fleets would be defeated. "All Cathari ships protect the flagship," Zaltek ordered, but his vessels were scattered across the battlefield, too far away to help in time. "Not all ships," Jake Morrison said quietly. The Defiant changed course, moving directly toward the massive Sector command ship. The human vessel was barely holding together, but it still had one weapon left, itself. "Human captain, what are you doing?" Zaltek asked. "What we should have done 20 minutes ago," Jake replied. "Ben, give me ramming speed." "Captain, no," Zaltek said. "Your crew will be killed." "Maybe, but your ship will survive, and so will your crew." That's what matters now. The USS Defiant accelerated toward the Sector command ship, using every bit of power it had left. The poor insect vessel turned its weapons on the approaching human ship, but the Defiant kept coming. Energy blasts tore through the hull, explosions rippled along the sides, and fires burned in every section. But just before impact, something unexpected happened. The Cathari ships had managed to coordinate their fire, hitting the Sector command ship at the exact moment the Defiant struck it. The combined attack was devastating. The insect ship broke apart in a massive explosion that lit up space for millions of miles. The destruction of their command ship threw the remaining Sector forces into confusion. Without their hive mind leadership, the individual ships began to retreat, disappearing back into hyperspace as quickly as they had arrived. War Commander Zalthek stared at the debris field where the human ship had been. The Defiant was gone, destroyed in its final attack, but somehow, incredibly, he was detecting life signs in the wreckage. All ships begin rescue operations immediately, Zalthek ordered. Find the human survivors. His officers looked at him in surprise. Rescuing enemy survivors was not Cathari tradition, but Zalthek no longer cared about tradition. War Commander? His tactical officer asked. You heard me? Find them. Save them. They are not our enemies anymore. The rescue took hours. Cathari ships pulled human survivors from the wreckage of the Defiant, including Captain Jake Morrison, Dr. Amy Collins, and amazingly Lieutenant Ryan Clark and his team from the weapons section. They had survived in an emergency shelter, still trying to repair their weapons even after their ship was destroyed. Later, on the Cathari flagship, War Commander Zalthek met with Captain Morrison in the medical bay. The human captain was injured, but alive, and his first words were about his crew. How many did we lose? Jake asked. Fewer than expected, Zalthek replied. Your Dr. Collins says most of your crew will recover. You humans are difficult to kill. Jake smiled weakly. We've had practice. Zalthek studied the human captain for a long moment. I must ask you something. Why did you offer alliance? We were your enemies. We would have enslaved your people. Because you're not the real enemy, Jake replied. Those Sector ships would have killed all of us. Sometimes you have to choose the lesser evil, and sometimes, if you're lucky, the lesser evil turns out to be not so evil after all. Zalthek nodded slowly. In one day, everything he believed about strength, about warfare, about what made a species truly powerful, had been turned upside down. The humans had shown him that real strength came not from conquering others, but from protecting them. Not from standing alone, but from standing together. I will send word to my High Council, Zalthek said. The Cathari Empire will not be the same after today. Neither will humanity, Jake replied. But maybe that's a good thing. As the rescue operations continued, War Commander Zalthek composed his final report of the battle. In it, he wrote words that would change the course of galactic history. Today I learned that the humans are not like other species we have encountered. They do not fight because they hate their enemies. They fight because they love their friends. This makes them the most dangerous and most valuable allies in the galaxy. The Cathari Empire recommends immediate peaceful contact and formal alliance with the human species. The war between humans and Cathari had lasted less than an hour. The friendship that followed would last for centuries,